Hi everyone, I'm fresh back from Burning Man. Still getting my hands dusty as I unpack my stuff. I'm relieved to be mostly clean. But I wanted to talk with you about some thoughts that I had about the parallel symbolism between Burning Man and Christianity. I think this is something that might be overlooked. But in the ritual of burning the man, it actually has a lot of parallels with the Christian story. Now there's two main burns at Burning Man, two main giant rituals. One is the burning of the temple, and the other is the burning of the man. Now both of these are rituals of change and loss. The theme this year was metamorphosis, and I think that is a constant theme in every year in Burning Man. It's always about this rebirth, this letting go. But these two rituals have very different emotional tones. The temple happens last, on the last day. It's a somber burn. The dominant tone is sadness. All the constant thumping music that haunts you all week at Burning Man is turned off. And people watch in silence as the temple filled with memorials and to their dead loved ones, or to other things they're trying to let go of, like an addiction. All these things are burned up in a conflagration. There's a lot of weeping, there's a lot of sadness. The temple is about the necessity of letting go. It's the things that it's about yielding to the cruel onslaught of time that cannot be resisted. It's about making peace with that. It's about coming together as a community to bear the burden of loss, to bear the wound together. The man, on the other hand, is a very different kind of ritual. When we burn the man, it is a Dionysian affair. There is glee, there's aggression, there is joy. The man is a pagan sacrifice. It is reminiscent of those old sacrifices where a marginal person of society, maybe a madman or a beggar, maybe a woman who knows her way around the occult too well, maybe a captured enemy soldier, one of these people would be taken and they would be sacrificed in front of the crowd as a vehicle to bear all the darkness in society, to bear all of the things that we want to purge from society and maybe from ourselves. So there's a lot of aggression in the burning of the man. As the man lights on fire, as pieces of him fall, as the man himself stumbles, the crowd cheers. And then at the end, when the flames have consumed the entire edifice that he stands on and himself, the crowd is allowed to approach the fire. They run around it in a dance of joy and glee. There is something very disturbing about the burning of the man, but only if we are disturbed by human nature. Now, on its surface, we might think that there's not much that sounds Christian about a pagan sacrifice. But Christianity is not distinct from paganism. Rather than being a separate stream from pagan mythology, it is a transcendence of it, a completion of it. And in this, I'm going to be drawing very heavily on the philosophy of Girard. Because Christ himself echoes the mythology of the scapegoat. Christ was a scapegoat. He was picked out because he was strange. He was different. He was unavoidably different. There was something about him which caused controversy wherever he went, because he had his eye on what really mattered. He challenged the existing power structures. He was not one to lay low. And at the same time, there was something compelling about what he said. People were following him. The wretched of society were following him, the lowest. And also those from rather middling occupations like fishermen who just had uncommon ability to see. that there was something special about this man. So ultimately, Christ is made a scapegoat. He takes the place of one of these sacrificial victims. And just like them, society places all of its darkness on Christ. But Christ actually has the ability, according to Christian theology, to transform it. It is not merely a palliative affair, but it is the ultimate sacrifice done once and for all. But aside from the fact of human sacrifice, there are more parallels between the burning of the man, and the Christ story. In the burning of the man, we don't have this idea that he's anyone special. We don't see him as someone to be worshipped. He is not the Son of God. The effigy of the man that we build and we burn is just an abstraction. It doesn't even have a face. We don't even actually know if it is in fact a male, because the word man can be used generically and it has no sex characteristics. This might seem to be a discontinuity between the symbolism of the man and the symbolism of Christ, but think, how would the crowd who did not follow Christ see his crucifixion? How would the crowd that was chanting, "Crucify him, crucify him," how would they have seen Christ? Would they have seen God being put to death? No. They did not recognize that there was anything special about him, except for the fact that he was a troublemaker. When Pontius Pilate offered to pardon either this radical rabbi, Jesus, or a known murderer, Barabbas, they said, "Give us Barabbas." And so in the burning of the man, we find ourselves in the place of the crowd, in the place of one of those who did not know who Christ was. And we see our own propensity to gang up, to feel powerful as a mob, to pick on someone. These natural human tendencies, these tendencies that have ordered society for thousands of years, we find these darkest parts of us on display. It brings these out of us. And they are the same instincts that put to death Christ. And there are further parallels as well, just in the language used to talk about the man. It's a very abstract way to talk about someone, the man. There's a way that he is a blank canvas. Perhaps the man is a quintessential man, meant to represent everyone. Maybe the man's relationship to us is the relationship of every person to society as they find themselves tormented in some way. Some part of you will be burned away through the necessity of fitting in to the social order. If we think about the man as a quintessential person, then Christ also is often talked about in a way that makes him to be the quintessential person, like his story being the quintessential human story. When Pilate presents him to the crowd, he famously says, "Ecce homo," the man. Look, the man. Christ is referred to in these abstract ways. One of the epithets used to refer to Christ over and over is the Son of Man, which is a pretty generic way of talking about someone. So there is some way that, although Christ is not merely generic, he does represent the common human condition. And then what separates him is that he is also fully divine while being fully human. In the last parallel between the ritual of the man burn and the story of Christ is right before the man is lit on fire. He is built such that he can raise his arms. And it looks like he's accepting his fate. It looks as if to say, "Burn me. Burn me." He's pointing towards the heavens where his ashes are going to fly. And so that's kind of a parallel. There's a suggestion that he's a willing victim, as Christ was. Christ knew about his death. He foretold it, and he walked that path as painful as it was. And lastly, there is some sense that this death of the man is not permanent. There is some sense of potential resurrection because we know the man will be back next year. As soon as the man is burned, we start a countdown, 364 days until the man burns again. So because he is put to death by fire rather than a crucifix, maybe it suggests more of a phoenix story than it does the Christ story. But in both cases, there is a sense that to change is not to die, or maybe to die is not to die. And so in the man's burning, we might see a symbolism of our old selves being put to death, of what we, of a purging of who we were, losing some part of ourselves, or all of ourselves. But there's a knowledge that we will live again. The death of time, of metamorphosis, is not a permanent death. And that's the same message as the Christ story, that death has been defeated. So I am struck by just how many parallels and in the symbolism there are between Burning Man and Christ. We have an idea of Burning Man as being a very unchristian place. And I'm sure that those who designed the Burning Man rituals, probably most of them weren't Christian. But we're living in a Christian milieu, or a post-Christian milieu, where the symbolism of Christianity, the ideas of Christianity, are present in our subconscious, in our collective unconscious even, and they don't disappear, but they resurface in our art. And Burning Man is one of those places. Well, I hope you've enjoyed this. I hope I've made sense. Maybe I'll turn this into an essay someday so that it can be a little bit more written out, but I'm not much of a scholar. I'm more of a BS artist, to be frank. But like and subscribe if you enjoyed this, and maybe throw some bucks at my a subscribe star, and the more people interact with my content, the more I'll be motivated to make more of this. Thanks, and I'll talk to you later.